Evelyn Carter had spent 78 years holding things together. Her family, her marriage, her home, her heart. Everything that cracked, she mended. And though people called her kind, dependable, even a saint, none of them saw the quiet exhaustion behind her smile. She'd always said life was like fabric, full of tears and loose threads, but strong if you cared for it. Yet over time, she had stopped noticing the holes in her own. When her husband Richard passed away 10 years ago, the silence became a second skin. The house they shared, a 2-story cottage with ivy creeping up the walls, felt like a museum of moments she couldn't touch anymore. His favorite hat still hung by the door. The teacup he used every morning still sat by the sink. And the piano she once played for him, Moon River, every Sunday after dinner, gathered dust under the weight of years. Her son, Daniel, lived 2 states away, busy with important things. He called once a month, always promising to visit, always ending the call with the same words, "Love you, Mom. I'll come soon." He never did. And so Evelyn lived inside her quiet rituals. Morning tea, the crossword in the newspaper, feeding the robins on the porch. The slow dance of time, graceful, predictable, lonely. Until one morning, life knocked on her door. Literally. The letter was simple, cream paper, blue ink, written by hand. "Mrs. Carter, your name was recommended by the library. We're creating an intergenerational arts program called Haven's Crossing. We believe wisdom should never fade. Would you join us to teach children forgotten crafts? Margaret Hall, Program Director." Evelyn read it twice, unsure if it was real. She hadn't taught anything in years. But as she traced the loops of Margaret's handwriting, a small warmth flickered inside her, the kind she hadn't felt since her husband's laughter filled the house. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, moonlight spilling over her wrinkled hands, the same hands that had held babies, mended dresses, wiped tears, and buried dreams. "What if I still have something to give?" she whispered to the night. The next week, she walked into Haven's Crossing for the first time. The place smelled of cinnamon and fresh paint. The walls were covered with children's drawings, houses, stars, crooked hearts, all bursting with color. Margaret, a woman with silver hair and eyes full of warmth, greeted her at the door. "Mrs. Carter, I'm so glad you came." Evelyn smiled, nervous. "It's been a long time since anyone needed me for something like this." "Oh," Margaret said softly, "we all need each other, especially now." Those words stayed with her. They placed her in the textile room, a small sunny space filled with shelves of yarn and boxes of buttons. The sewing machines were old but sturdy, their hums like heartbeats. When the children arrived, Evelyn felt a lump in her throat. There were 12 of them, ranging from 6 to 12 years old, each buzzing with energy. She stood there, trembling, wondering what she was doing. Then a little girl named Maya tugged her sleeve. "Miss Evelyn," she said, "can you teach me how to make a scarf like yours?" Evelyn laughed, surprised. "This old thing? I made it 50 years ago." Maya nodded eagerly. "Then it must be lucky." Something in that simple sentence cracked her open. The first class was chaos, laughter, spilled thread, tangled yarn. But beneath the noise, something beautiful was happening. Evelyn found herself smiling without realizing it. Her hands moved with purpose again, her voice steady as she guided small fingers through loops and stitches. At one point, a boy named Danny dropped his needle and sighed. "I can't do it. It's too hard." Evelyn knelt beside him, her knees protesting. "You know," she said softly, "the first time I tried knitting, I poked my thumb so many times I nearly quit." He looked up. "Really?" She nodded. "But my grandmother told me something. Every mistake is just a stitch that hasn't found its place yet." Danny smiled and tried again. By the end of the day, every child left with something imperfect, and proud of it. Evelyn sat alone in the quiet room afterward, looking at the messy table, the threads of every color tangled together. And for the first time in years, the mess didn't bother her. It felt like proof of life. Weeks turned into months. Evelyn began bringing homemade cookies, just like she used to bake for her son. She started humming while she worked, her voice soft but steady. The children started calling her Grandma Evelyn. One afternoon, Danny showed up with a small, colorful blanket. "It's not perfect," he said, "but I made it for you, so you don't get cold anymore." She pressed the fabric to her chest. Her hands shook, not from age, but emotion. "Thank you, my dear," she whispered. "You just warmed more than my hands." From that day on, something changed in her. Her mornings felt lighter. The tea tasted sweeter. She no longer felt like she was waiting for life to end. She was part of it again. Then came the surprise. Margaret invited her into the office one afternoon. On the desk were dozens of photos. Children smiling, holding up scarves, blankets, dolls. "These are your students," Margaret said. "We're planning an exhibition called The Light in Our Hands. You'll be our guest of honor." Evelyn's mouth fell open. "Oh, I couldn't—" "You must," Margaret interrupted gently. "You've given them more than skills. You've given them confidence. That's art, too." The night of the exhibition, the hall glowed with soft lights and laughter. Families filled the room, marveling at the colorful creations. Evelyn stood at the back, trembling with quiet pride. Then she saw it. In the center of the room, a massive quilt, made from hundreds of fabric squares stitched together by the children. In the middle, embroidered in gold thread, were the words, "She taught us how to create, and in doing so, how to love." Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. The children ran up, wrapping their arms around her, their little hands clutching hers like anchors. For the first time since Richard's death, Evelyn felt truly alive, not remembered, not respected, but loved. When she returned home that night, she turned on the light, brewed her tea, and opened the piano. Her fingers hesitated, then pressed a key. The note rang out, shaky but beautiful. She began to play Moon River, her voice barely above a whisper. "I still remember, my love," she said softly, "but I've found new songs too." The next morning she began writing again. Not letters of regret, but letters of gratitude, to life, to love, to herself. "Dear life, thank you for finding me again. I thought I was done, but you weren't done with me." Years later, when Evelyn passed away, the town came together once more. The community center was filled with flowers and the faint sound of laughter, recordings of her classes playing softly. On every wall hung crafts made by her students, now grown, doctors, artists, teachers, parents. Above the door, a plaque read, "The light in her hands still shines." And every year after that, on the anniversary of her first class, the children of Haven S. Crossing, and their children, would gather to sew a single golden thread into the community quilt. They called it Evelyn's Promise, because she had once said, "Everything we create carries a piece of our heart, and hearts, my dear, never really fade." She spent a lifetime mending others, but in the end she discovered that every stitch she made had been quietly repairing her too.